Joanna,
Okay.
I am so glad you're going to say something.
You may not. With this Torah portion, how do we handle organs donation from a person that had an accident and died?
How do we handle donating organs? You mean whether we should or not?
It said, we be unclean if the person was dead and you got the organ?
I don't know how to answer that question. You'll have to allow me time to think on that one.
Do your homework.
Do my homework. Do we have a comment down the way?
I have the mic over here.
Oh, he's over there. The mic's over here. Okay, I'm sorry.
I was just going to clarify.
Throwing me a curveball there, Alex.
I was just going to clarify on the organ donation statement, only because I've done work with it. But they're not necessarily always still living when the organs are donated. When a person reaches a Glasgow Coma Scale of 5, which is the number that you have to figure out all their functions and different things, you have to notify the donor services so they can start the process to prepare to see whether or not they can even use any of this person's organs. And it's a really fun, usually about a 1 or 2 hour conversation you have on a phone with somebody at the donor services telling them this person's entire history so that they can eliminate or decide whether or not they're a candidate. But they have up to 24 hours after the person passes to come and collect those organs. So the person's not always still alive. I've taken care of people who've been deceased, just taken care of their bodies all night, just waiting for donor services to come pick them up. So,
I still don't know how to answer the question. I would just say that I'm sure that people who have received those donor organs and are living are probably pretty thankful. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question.
Well, I was thinking that wouldn't preserved life be greater than be unclean by touching a dead body?
Okay, so you're saying, wouldn't the preservation of life supersede other?
Yeah.
Something to consider. That's something to consider. It's gonna seem like I'm way off on something else. But when the scripture talks about something more than once, you would think that that's important. For instance, it says twice within just a few verses, and Edom is Esau, or vice versa. So in other words, he wanted us to know that Esau is Edom, and Edom is Esau. So with that thinking, the Bible talks more than once about what's clean to eat and what not, right? More than once? So I guess he's trying to make the point, I want you to eat clean, all right? Shabbat, the observance of Shabbat, that's mentioned more than once, right? And if memory serves me, the mention of Shabbat is something like, it's mentioned like 3 to 4 times more than any mentions of what's clean and what you should eat, those kinds of things. So if we were going to rank them, what becomes more important? Well, you want to do Shabbat, okay? Not that you throw out the other, but he mentions the thing about Shabbat a lot more than he does about eating clean. When it comes to being considerate of people and how you treat others, mentioned probably 3 to 4 times more than what Shabbat is mentioned. So what's he putting emphasis on? How we treat one another, being kind, being, all those kinds of things. Here's where I'm going with this. There is, I think, merit to that idea that because he's all about life and he's always speaking about life and restoration and these kinds of things, that might be something that we'd have to consider very, very strongly, that the preservation of life is to be considered. Now, I will put this little asterisk on it. If somebody says to me, I'll let you live if you bow down and worship these idols. This we cannot do. We cannot, for our own sake, offend him, break his instructions, do something that is going to defame him in any way. So there are, I guess, exceptions to that. So I think there's merit to the argument. We'd have to go back and forth with that a little bit, though. But thank you. Very, very observant there. Thank you very much. Have no idea who's next.
I wanted to, if I may, comment on the organ donation thing. As far as taking on something that is unclean and putting it within us and then asking that Abba would sanctify it, I'd question that a little bit, because then I would just eat some bacon and ask God to bless it.
And many people do.
Yes, and I don't know that is, as for our family, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But we have had that discussion within our own household about, well, what happens if I need blood or if I needed an organ or anything like that. And for where we are, we have come to the conclusion that the DNA is a very important thing. That if we are what we eat, then what we take into us can greatly affect what we are. And doesn't it say something like, that the whole earth was corrupt during Noah's day, that all of mankind was corrupt, which leads me to consider, is it a possibility that their DNA was corrupt? Also,
well, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm convinced that that's what happened back in the garden when man fell. Something happened with the DNA.
That DNA flopped. So if I needed blood, I would want it from a brother or a sister who has gone through the sanctification process that we're all going through, trusting that the Father is working in that. So if I needed blood, I would ask from my brothers and sisters in this congregation. If it was coming outside of that, I have no idea what that person was into, and it may sound weird to some, but if they're into Wicca or some other thing, I think that greatly affects their DNA too, and the resonance that comes through whatever is in their blood. And it would go all the way down into the organs and everything else. So as for our house, if I needed an organ and it wasn't available, it's up to Abba. I'm going, if it's not available, then I'll see you guys on the next side. And that goes along with this whole jab thing that's out there now.
What thing?
The jab. I won't say the jab.
Okay.
Yes. A lot of people would think we're weird, but I don't put my trust in that. There's no reason to do that. I've got my reasons, and if you want to, I'll be more than happy to chat with you. But yeah, so that whole DNA thing really, I'm praying that I know that Abba changes me. He's working on changing me, and He will change me. But I'm very guarded over protecting this temple that He's given me.
Well, that resonates with me. There are certain areas that I'm very, very reluctant to say, this is the way it is, so let it be written, so let it be done, But there are things that I have very strong feelings about, that this is what I would do, or I would not do that. But I'm not going to speak for everybody else. A lot of things we got to work out on our own. But I appreciate your input.